Well, the Sooners are 6-7, and yeah, this is the first time in my career, my lifetime, that I've ever seen the Sooners be this bad. I've seen some pretty ugly seasons, but not anything this bad. So, yeah, this sucks. Oklahoma Sooners lose 35-32 to Florida State in the Cheez-It Bowl. But before we get into it and I give you guys my thoughts, please go ahead and hit that like and the subscribe button. Let me know what you guys are thinking, because it sucks. This one hurts a little bit. This one stings. So, the Oklahoma Sooners this season, they finished the regular season 6-6. They finish it 6-7, losing to Florida State here, and they put up more of a fight than I think a lot of people thought they were going to. They only lose the game by 3 points, but it looks like per Caesar Sportsbook, the line was FSU -10. So definitely interesting there. It's funny. The over-under was 67. We literally were at 67 today, so we were even there. But, this is something that kind of bugs me about quote-unquote neutral site games or bowl games. Sometimes they're played in the home state of a specific team, or they're played like the state over and the other team's got to travel halfway across the country. Oregon and Georgia. But it's like that, I don't know, it's like that shouldn't be allowed. You should be able to give the teams, a better opportunity to compete at a neutral site. And I get it, OU travels well. But, when you look at it, it was 75-25 Florida State fans. And it was loud in there. Which, again, we're not going to use that as an excuse. It's just I would like to be able to see an opportunity for it to be a true neutral site game and not be a home game for Florida State pretty much, because that's really what it was. Ultimately, when you watch the game, I look at it and I got to put a lot of blame on us not being able to defend the passing game very well. Because I felt like we focused so much on the running game today in containing those running backs that we allowed Jordan Travis to just go off and have a hell of a night. Ultimately, let's look at the team stats. So let's look at the stats here. And you have Oklahoma winning third down efficiency, 9 out of 18. Florida was 5 out of 12. You have Oklahoma converting one of their 2 fourth down conversions. Florida was 0 for 3. So, OU had good fourth down defense there. But they allowed 587 total yards, 418 through the air, 169 through the ground, which I was impressed with. And for a good majority of the game, the Oklahoma defense was holding their ground, right? They were bending but not breaking. And it was really, in that fourth quarter where you really started to see the Seminoles start to pull away as they scored 17 points in the fourth quarter. They got 7 in the third, so a 24-point advantage in the second half compared to Oklahoma's 15 points that they put up. And, yeah, that's really the story of your game. If Oklahoma would have just, stacked that line to 4 guys or 5 guys and created a bigger pass rush for Jordan, you probably would have won this game. You really probably would have, and you would have probably been talking about a 7-6 Oklahoma Sooners team going into 2023 with at least some momentum and their heads held high. But looking at some of the positives about this game, because I think there were some positives, even though, we don't want to take moral victories here. Their running game for the Sooners was able to bring out some pretty good drives for Oklahoma, right? Our scoring drives weren't like 1 minute and done. We had the ball for 30 minutes and 10 seconds, while Florida State only had it for 29 minutes. So Oklahoma won the time of possession. How many times have you seen that this season? Ultimately, you got to clean up some of those penalties. You had 7 for 46. And, I'm not a huge Dillon Gabriel hater. I'm not going to jump on that one too much. But Dillon Gabriel does have to get rid of the ball. I will agree with that. He held onto the ball way too much. He got sacked 8 times. And, probably 3 or 4 of those could have been avoided by giving up the ball, throwing it out of bounds. He didn't do that. And the offensive line, even though they're so banged up, and there were guys that had opted out. Ultimately, they played pretty well for what they had. They did. They played pretty well. So I'm disappointed because ultimately, I really wanted to come out of this game a winner. But if you're the Sooners, you look at this 6-7, and you look at this as a season to build on. And you look at it as an opportunity to go out next season with little expectations and to potentially go win 10 or 11 games. Because I said on the Horns Down podcast and their stream just a minute ago with Chris, if you guys haven't, please go check it out. But if OU was to go win 10 or 11 games next season, I would not be surprised. Just because they're really trying to hit the portal and take the guys that best fit their system and not necessarily the guys that are just best available, which is, I think, going to be a big turning point for this team next year, right? You address the needs at linebacker. You address the interior defensive line needs. You address the offensive line, because I think you got to probably get maybe one or two guys out of the transfer portal for the offensive line. And we brought up a very interesting debate. Do you move David Agwebu to the edge? I think that'd be perfect. I think that'd be great. You'd have Jonah Laulu there. You have Armason Thomas, PJ Adebore. Move Ethan Downs and Reggie Grimes inside. I think they would probably excel a little bit more. You've got Marcus Strong and Ashton Sanders in this 23 class that could go play that nose tackle position. You potentially have, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't had a chance to look this up. But if Isaiah Coe still has eligibility, you can have Isaiah Coe out there. Plus any guys that you take throughout the transfer portal, Jacob Lacey, Trace Ford. Like, this defense could look a lot different next year. And the secondary, oh my goodness. Let's talk about that. You could have Woody Washington, Key Lawrence. If CJ Colton decides to come back, which I think he should, just because I think he could make himself a first-round pick if he does, you could have CJ Colton, Woody Washington as your two corners to start. And then in your safeties, you could have either Robert Spears-Jennings, Peyton Bowen, and then you'll for sure have Billy Bowman out there. So, two safeties, two corners. The secondary might be one of the deepest rooms for Oklahoma going into the 2023 season. Even if CJ Colton goes to the draft, just because you've got some of those young 918 boys. Shout out to Travis up there in Tulsa and Drew England in Tulsa as well. You got some of those 918 boys and Gentry Williams and Robert Spears-Jennings and I believe Jaden Rowe too. So Oklahoma's got a lot of talent next year. And that's where I think, again, if they go win 10 and 11 games, it wouldn't shock you. But ultimately, I think the expectations for Oklahoma should be an 8 or 9 win season next year. I think you could realistically say they could go do that. And that should be the expectations. Dillon Gabriel, have a whole offseason to work with some of these wide receivers. Have them come back. I think that would be a good option. And I think you guys would be impressed with what you see. Mainly because the wide receivers are going to have an opportunity to get their feet under themselves after this has just been a crazy season for them, losing Kel Gundy. And then again, Dillon Gabriel, he'll have his opportunity to potentially come back and make himself a high draft pick potentially. If he comes out, he really balls out for Oklahoma next year, makes himself a Heisman contender, we could be talking about Dillon Gabriel going maybe in the first 5 rounds. That could be a possibility. Right now, I think he's outside the 5 rounds, but he could work his way in there. So, yeah, that's my quick early thoughts on the Sooners. I'll probably do another video with some other guys on Saturday or Sunday. Maybe kind of just recapping the state of the Oklahoma program. So keep your eyes out on that one. No new recruiting news right now. It's going to be pretty quiet probably for a couple months. But the transfer portal is about to get wild, especially with bowl season wrapping up. So you guys want to keep your guys out for any transfer portal videos, as I potentially have some that if the players decide to hit the portal, I am excited to make. So jump down in the comments below. Let me know what your guys' thoughts about the Oklahoma-Florida State game was, and what do you expect from this team next year in terms of a record?